So this is our last year before Chag HaShavuos, and it's Shloshis Yemei Hagbala this Shabbos, so it is only natural that we talk about Ahavas Torah, Simchas Torah, and Birchas HaTorah. And we will also briefly address the question, if you're up all night, do you say Birchas HaTorah in the morning? So what is Birchas HaTorah all about? I think I mentioned this in the past more than once. How many different criteria are there in Dinei Brachos? How many different types of brachas do we have? Most people, and even Poskim, are familiar with three. Birchas HaMitzvahs, Birchas HaNenen, and Birchas HaShevach. Actually, there are six. Birchas HaMitzvahs, many mitzvahs we perform, we have a bracha. Most notably, Lulav, Sukkah, Matzah, Morer, what else? Megillah, Chanukah, two mitzvahs that are Rabbanon. Birchas HaNehenen, whatever you eat or drink, you need to make a bracha. Birchas HaShevach. Give me examples of Birchas HaShevach. Every Shechianu is Birchas HaShevach, whether it's Yom Tov, or you buy a new suit, or various different mitzvahs upon which we say a Shechianu. So how do I get to six? Shevach and Hoidoya are very closely related, but they're not the same. Hoidoya is always personal. When a person is Zeicha L'Chasdei Shemayim, he needs to acknowledge that it is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say thank you. An example of Birchas Hoidoya. What? Birchas HaGaimal. You came safely home. You were ill and you're okay. Birchas HaGaimal is Birchas Hoidoya. Examples of Birchas HaShevach, well, I already said, Shechianu. When you go somewhere in the world, you go to the Alps, or even you see the Hermon, from time to time you say, Oysa Masa Bereishis. You see majestic mountains, great oceans, and you say, Oysa Masa Bereishis. Those are Birchas HaShevach. At another opportunity, I will explain what I wrote in Minchas Osher. There's a Machlokes Shechanoch and the Namo, 15 Birchas HaShachar that we say every day in the morning. Either Birchas HaShevach or Birchas HaIdoya. Either personal or general. So we have Birchas HaMitzvahs, Birchas HaNenen, Shevach and Idoya. What else? Birchos HaTfilah. What is unique about Birchos HaTfilah? And these brachas, we not only say thank you, and it is not only Shiur, V'Shevach, V'Halel, V'Hidoya, we also have bakoshes, and we plead with the Kodesh Baruch Hu to give us what we need. An example of Birchas HaTfilah. First of all, Bruchas Emtsoyes and Shmoynes. All the Bruchas, besides the first three and the last three. What else? Could you remember Birchos HaTfilah? Do we have another Birchas Tfilah? Tfilas HaDerech. You leave home, you go on a journey, and you daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tagiyeni lemchoyis chavtzeinu v'satzidenu l'sholem v'tachzirenu l'sholem. That is a tefillah. What else? V'harevnu. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us v'harevnu Hashem Elokeinu. So, yesh la'ayin Birchas HaTorah. Is Birchas HaTorah Birchas HaMitzvah? Do we say Birchas HaTorah before we're Mekayim Mitzvahs Talmud Torah? Or rather, like the Briskerov quotes in the name of his great father, Reb Chaim, Birchas HaTorah is on the Chefza of Torah. Well, if it's brisk, it's got to be Chefza or Gavra. But in other words, do we say Birchas HaTorah al Etzem HaTalmud, Simchoso, Chiboso? And when we learn Torah, we actually thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for choosing us, for giving us Torah. So is Birchas HaTorah necessitated by mitzvahs Talmud Torah, like any other Birchas HaMitzvah, or is it Birchas HaShevach? That might be a machlokes mechaber and the gro. Source number one, hamahara b'divrei Torah einoi tzorech levorech. If you don't vocalize and verbalize what you're learning, then ein tzorech levorech. And why not? Writes the go, kaimelon hirer kalav k'dibur dami. But then at the end of the second paragraph, aval kol zeh tzorech yun. Dekan mevorech al mitzvah, v'chilek mitzvah v'hirur, v'aloi nemo v'ogisa b'yomam v'layla, v'rotze loimer b'leiv, k'may shekosav v'heg yoin libi. So the Gaon disagrees, and the Gaon says, it's definitely a mitzvah to think about Torah, so why wouldn't you say a bracha? What would the Shulchan Aruch respond? Probably he would say, Birchas Torah is not about the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, it is about Etzem HaTalmud. And if it's not on the mitzvah, there is no reason to say, if you're Mekayim the mitzvah behiru, you need to say the bracha as well. And maybe Chefza Shel Torah is only Dibur Shel Torah. So maybe that is the machlokes between the Gaon and the Beis Yosef. If so, then they go to Shitosoi and the last sif of this very same siman. Sif Yudaled, and that is source number 3. Noshim mevorchos Birchas HaTorah. Women are not exempt. They are chayev in Birchas HaTorah. The Gaon, Mogan Avon B'Shem Ogul, ודבריהם דחויים מכמה פונים וקרות צווח ולמדתם מזבניכם ולא בנסיכם היכתוב מבציוונו ונוסן לנו אסתר עושוי. So, no, noshim are part of a Talmud Torah. However, the Gaon says, if noshim could make a brocha and mitzvah say shazman grama, even though they're potter, then according to those opinions, they could say on Torah as well. But that is not a chiyuv. That is only a reshus. And therefore the Gaon disagrees with the mechaber that noshim, that women, must say Birchas HaTorah. What's the argument? The Gaon is shitosai. Birchas HaTorah is about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. So if a woman is not chayiv, how could she say Birchas HaTorah? The mechaber is shitosai, and the Shulchan Aruch would respond if we would have the opportunity, and he would say, you're wrong once again, but Birchas HaTorah is not associated with mitzvahs Talmud Torah. It is associated with Talmud. And noshim definitely must learn. They are mechuyev in the vast majority of mitzvahs. And they have special mitzvahs which are upon them, like Halachos Chanukah, Afroshas Challah. There is so much Torah that women need to learn. And if they need to learn, they need to make the bracha. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Gro are l'shitosam. What is Birchas HaTorah about? Is it Birchas HaMitzvah or Birchas HaShevach? So many times in my shiurim I apologize and I say, if I would live 800 years ago, this is what I would say. But I always say, I'm aware that I didn't live 800 years ago, and there's a good reason for that. Obviously, what I have to say is not that important. But anyway, I must say what I would say. In our case, I don't need to go back 800 years. If I would live 250 years ago, I would say, what's the machlokes? What is all this about? Let me make a compromise. Noshim cannot say the first bracha because it's Asher Kedeshonu b'mitzvahs v'tzivonu. They're not mitzvah. But why wouldn't they say Asher Bocha Bonim HaKol Ha'amim v'nosan lanu Esther Osai? It's Birchas HaShevach. They were chosen just as their men were chosen. And they stood at Har Sinai, and they said, Nasa v'nishma, so why can't they say the last bracha? Hamaharer b'divrei Torah, maybe should say the first, not necessarily the last. So why do these three brachas necessarily go together? If the question is, you are mitzvah, but you're not really vocalizing. You're not mitzvah, but you're learning. So why wouldn't we differentiate between the two different brachas? Shtei tshuvas b'davar. According to many poskim, Birchas HaTorah is diuraisa. And if it's diuraisa, it is neither Birchas HaMitzvah nor Birchas HaShevach, because these very concepts, Birchas HaMitzvah, Birchas HaShevach, are the Rabbanans. All the other brachas are the Rabbanan. But still, it is a legitimate question, what is the mechayev to say this bracha? Is it mitzvah talmid Torah? Or is it shivcho shel Torah, chibosa, ahavos, and the schus to learn Torah? But because the nusach of these brachas are midrabanan, and the etzem bracha is mena Torah, that is the reason we do not differentiate between one bracha and the other. All these three brachas are one package, and they're all defined as Birchas HaTorah. And therefore, if the reason we must say this bracha is the chiyuv, then it's all three brachas. And if we should not say these brachas, then you don't see any of them. And if you need to say, because it's not mitzvahs talmid Torah, you say all three. But for me, this is a reason to offer a different interpretation in the machlokes HaMechaber and the Gra. That's not the question. What is Birchas HaTorah? The question is different, but we'll leave that for another opportunity. So it is a relevant question. What is Birchas HaTorah about? Is it mitzvahs talmid Torah or shvocha shel Torah? And maybe this very same question affects another halacha. And that brings us source number 5. Shinas kva biyoim al mitosoi have hefsek v'yesh oimrim de lo have hefsek v'chein nahago. This is a strange seif, because I think I explained to you many times when the Shulchan Aruch brings two different opinions. First opinion bistoma, and the second opinion yesh oimrim. The halacha is according to opinion number 1. If the Shulchan Aruch writes yesh oimrim kach v'yesh oimrim kach, the halacha is opinion number 2. Let's read the sif again. Shinas kva b'yoim al mitos have a hefsek. Yesh oimrim de lo have a hefsek v'chein nahago. So the minig is not in accordance to what we would say is accepted halacha, and that is a bit strange. Siman Samech, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim. Mitzvahs ein tzichas kavona. Yesh oimrim she tzichas kavona. No. V'chein halacha. There the Shulchan Aruch writes chein halacha. Here he writes kein nahagu. So the minig is against what the Shulchan Aruch would consider the main shitta. So shinas kva al mitos have hefsek yeshem lo hefsek v'chein nahagu. What is the machlokes? A big machlokes between the Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam. What is mechayev Birchas HaTorah? Why do we say Birchas HaTorah every day in the morning? Rabbeinu Tam says that's the Tkonas Chachomim. Just like we daven every day in the morning. We say Birchas HaShachar every day in the morning. Birchas HaTorah is the same. Just like Birchas HaShachar. That's the Rabbeinu Tam. The Rosh says the Chiyuv Birchas HaTorah is totally in hefsek, like any other Birchas HaMitzvah. If you make a hefsek, you need to say the bracha again. However, Birchas HaTorah is not exactly like other mitzvahs, because Birchas HaTorah is v'hogisu v'yomam v'layla. And it goes without saying, people have so many different things they need to do. They need to daven. They need to eat. So many different things they need to do. And therefore, what is defined as a hefsek in Birchas HaTorah has different criteria than what is defined as a hefsek by other mitzvahs. By lulav, by matzah, by sukkah, if you uttered one word between the bracha and the mitzvah, you're out. You need to say the bracha again. Birchas HaTorah is different. Birchas HaTorah must be different. Because Birchas HaTorah is v'gisa v'yomam v'layla. You need to learn as much as you can. But there are 1,000 different things that people need to do. It's unreasonable that a person needs to say Birchas HaTorah 100 times a day. Every time he's going to speak to his wife or learn with his chavrusa one line, he's going to need to say Birchas HaTorah again. But according to the Rosh, fundamentally, Birchas HaTorah is about hefsek. And therefore, shinas kva, that is defined as a hefsek. And those are the two opinions. Shinas kva b'tzoraim, b'yoim al mitosai, have a hefsek. Yesh oimrim de lo have a hefsek. And that is because it's Shinas Kva by day. Shinas Kva by Laila, everybody agrees it's a hefsek. Chei nahagu. What is the minig? Lo have a hefsek. That means the minig is in accordance to Rabbeinu Tam. Doesn't depend on hefsek. Morning, like other Birchas HaShachar. And this question arises when you're up all night. You're up all night. You didn't sleep for one moment. Do you say Birchas in the morning? According to Rabbeinu Tam, yes. It's a new day. And just like you say Birchas HaShachar, you say Birchas HaTorah. According to the Rosh, there was no hefsek. Since you said Birchas HaTorah yesterday, there was no, so you don't say a bracha in the morning. And if the Shulchan Aruch writes, Kei nahagu, the minig is in accordance to Rabbeinu Tam, l'cha'oire, even if you're up all night, say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. Next sif. Afam lomad balaylo, alaylo olech achiyam shov, v'vein etzorach lachzav v'volach, kol zman shelo yishan. And why is that? Layla hoylach achar hayoim. So what about the other day in the morning? What do you do the other day in the morning? Lomed balaylo, laylach hoylach achar hayoim she'ova, ein etzorach lachzav v'lavorech. That means by night. In the morning, l'chayre, you did say a bracha. That coincides with Kain Nagu. The minig is Rabbeinu Tam. It depends on days and not on hefsek. The Beis Yosef brings the Machlokes, Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam, and let's have a look at the Magen Avraham. Kol zman shelo yishan mashma de'im neor kol halayla ein tzorach lavorach b'boika. כל זמן שלא ישן וצורך עיון. בשלם לסורס הטור דספילה דבשינת על ימלצם לא ישן אין צורך לבורך. אבל לפי מה שנהגו, שלא לבורך כשיושם ביום, אם כן, מה שמבורך בבויקה משום שקובע חכמים ברוכה זו בכל יום ויום דומי דשעה Birchas HaShachar. And that is the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. So why wouldn't he say a brocha in the morning? Let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. Afam lomed balayla, alayla hoylach achar hayom she'ova, ve'ein tzorech lavorech, kol zman shelo yishan. Magen Avraham understood, kol zman shelo yishan, even though the night is over and it's morning. Lulei divra Magen Avraham, we would say no, kol zman shelo yishan balayla. Because what is the essence of the sif? Halayla hoylech achar hayom she'ova. That's what the Shulchan Aruch is teaching us. That means, even though, regarding all the other halachos, yom hoylech achar halayla, but Birchas HaTorah halayla hoylech achar hayom. And therefore, if you didn't sleep by night, you don't need to say a bracha by night. But the other day in the morning, you should. That is the Bekiva Egis Taila against the Magen Avraham. Nelen is that in Lolo Kushamide. Then I had him over says if Shorosh Minidan Shalola Borch Kashiyashan. Koinoga. Heniken, Henulasis. So the Bekiva Egis says, no, this is a mistaken understanding in the Shulchan Aruch. Kolzman Shalayish, and he doesn't need to say a brocha even though he's learning all night. And why is that? Laila hoylech achar hayom. But as soon as you have the zricha, or even a loisa shachar, you say a bracha. And then Rabbi Kiva comes up with a spark of genius. And he says, if you took a nap Erev Shavuos, Erev Yom Tov, and usually if you didn't take a nap Erev Yom Tov, you're not going to be up all night. If you want to be up all night, so you take a nap Erev Yom Tov. So Mimonef Shech, you need to say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. Because according to the Rosh, you should have said Birchas HaTorah in the afternoon. Shinas Kva b'tzoraim. But the minig is Rabbeinu Tam. So you didn't say Birchas HaTorah in the afternoon. According to Rabbeinu Tam, whether you slept or not, you say Birchas HaTorah every day in the morning. So Rabbi Kiva says, if you slept Shinas Kva Erev Yom Tov, then a Kuli Almi, you have no problem. You say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. And that's a spark of genius. And it's Poshet L'chayre. Okay, so people ask me all the time, but I had Kavona B'Avarabba, and I asked them, is there only one time all year that you have Kavona b'Hava Rabba, and that is Shvias B'nait, ki ata rotze l'stabech עם Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Are you mechaven every night b'Hava Rabba for Birchas HaTorah? No one is. So, you want to complicate matters. So Shvias B'nait, you have in mind the Hava Rabba. So most people, and many people, take a nap in the afternoon, and nobody's mechaven b'Hava Rabba b'erev to Birchas HaTorah. Because that would mean, if I took a nap 2 o'clock noon, I'm not going to learn anything till I daven Marav. That is 9 o'clock by night, so I'm going to spend a half a day not learning because, I want to say Birchas HaTorah. So that's a B'Kiva Eiger. I'm an anicle of the Maram Ash, who was the greatest Talmud of the Sam Sofer. So whenever I mention my Zayder of Meir Ash, Shalosh Tshuvas Imre Eish, who am I to say who was the greatest disciple of the Sam Sofer? So many Gedolei Yisrael, his Talmidim, his great son, the Ksav Sofer, and the Maram Shik, and so many other Gedolim, but the Ksav Sofer has a hesped on the Maram Ash, and he writes, Gedol Talmidei Avi Moiri. So the Maram Ash was just 5 years younger than the Chassam Sofer, and he was his Talmud in Yarmut way before the Chassam Sofer went to Pressburg. The Chassam Sofer was still a very young Rav in Rosh Yeshiva. And that was his minig, as there's a Sefer, told us in Hugam of the Maram Ash, and that was his minig. He intentionally took a nap every Shavuos in the Erev Shavuos in the afternoon in order to be able to say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. So many people are up all night and they go to sleep in the morning right after Alois Shach and they daven later. Those people have no problem. You learn to the Alois, you take a nap, and when you get up, you definitely L'Kul Yalma need to say a bracha. But those that have the minig like in our yeshiva, that you daven with the nates, then the question is, do you say Birchas HaTorah in the morning? So the Magen Avraham recommends that you have somebody to be moitzi you in the morning, and that is a very unpleasant psak. Why is it an unpleasant psak? When we talk about brochas, many times I speak about how important it is passion in our mitzvahs. And the Baalei Mussar talk about tardemas hahergel. You get used to things. You no longer get excited and moved and energized. So I ask people, which bracha do you say with more kavana? Birchas Ilonos and Chodesh Nisan or Birchas HaTorah every day in the morning? Goes without saying, of course, Birchas Ilonos. I checked 10 times the neighbor's tree. Is there livluv or not? And when I finally saw those little flowers on the tree, I was so overwhelmed, and I took my kids, and we walked 10 minutes to that neighbor's house, and we all said the bracha together. Birchas HaTorah, usually you say you're still groggy, you're still half asleep, and you're afraid. Well, probably I'm going to start being mahara b'divrei Torah, and I have the machlokes, the machaba, and the gro. I don't want to go against the gro. So you say Birchas HaTorah as fast as you can, and you're still half asleep, and you're not really saying the bracha properly, even though it's the most important bracha. In the Dorm Pei Aleph, the Gemara says, Almo of the ha'aretz, what caused churban abayis and golas Yisrael sheliborku b'toilet chilo. But that's the reality of life. That's the reality of life. Once a year, we're up and fresh, and after learning all night, this is the day to say Birchas HaTorah. We never have an opportunity all year long. We're not sleepy. We learned all night. Now is the time to say Birchas HaTorah. And you say, no. Look for somebody that did sleep all night, and he'll be moitzi you with Birchas HaTorah. It's insane. Chaz v'sholem, it's not insane. If it's the psakim kabolin kabel. That's what the Magen Avraham says. So we prefer the eights of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Took a nap yesterday. Be mechaven ba'ava rabba shelo letzeis yedei chiyuv Birchas HaTorah. And then in the morning, this is your day. This is your opportunity to say a real Birchas HaTorah with kavana, with eslavus. So that's Rabbi Akiva Eiger. And I think it is Torah's emes And you don't need to be mechavan by night, be avarava. Because the minig is, Kerabenu Tam. Shulchan Aruch writes, the minig is, you don't say a brocha after Shinas Kvav B'Tzoraim. Why do you need to be from and mess things up for tomorrow morning? So that is the psak. So we mentioned before there are 3 brochas. The first one is the basic formula of Birchas HaMitzvahs, Asher Kedeshona V'Tzoysa V'Tzivono. The third, the Gemara says, it is the Ma'ulish B'Brochas, the most important, and that is the Birchas HaShevach. What's the middle brocha? I said it's Birchas HaTfilah, and that is Emes. Does anybody know who wrote the Levush? Who was the Baal HaLevushim on Dalet Chelke Shulchan Aruch? Who wrote the Levush? Anybody know? I will be pleasantly surprised. Who was the Levush? The Levush is one of the most important Sifrei Halacha. Reb Mordechai Yaffa was his name. He was unique in many ways. First of all, he was a Talmud of both the Ramah and the Marshal. The Marshal was the nemesis of the Ramah. No, that's not the right word, but they were Balei Plukta in many different areas, the Ramah and the Marshal. And the Levush was a Talmud of the Ramah and the Marshal. So he had the best of 2 worlds. What brought him to write his amazing sefer? He writes in his introduction, I always thought there's a need for a concise sefer on Dalet Chelke Shulchan Aruch, to give aloha psuka and some background. I was happy when the Bes Yosef came out, but when I analyzed the Bes Yosef, it's too long. We need something that is more condensed. The Bes Yosef is too long. So I started writing my sefer, and then the Shulchan Aruch came out, and I was in trouble. But then I analyzed the Shulchan Aruch, and I came to the conclusion it's too short. So he decided to go ahead with his plans, and we're so happy that he did, because we have the Levush, and the Levush is one of the most important Sforim. So it's just an interesting analysis of how we were zoich in the Levush. So the Levush is a major posek, but there are many divrei drush. I don't know why, but especially when it comes to brochas. He had some special feeling to brochas. Lemoshe, Ebenezer, he writes, there's a machloikas, what is Birchas Eirusin? According to most poskim, it's Birchas HaMitzvah. Asher Kedeshona b'mitzvos v'tzivon al haroyos. But the Rosh says, can it be Birchas HaMitzvah? Because all Birchas HaMitzvah are kum v'asei, and this is Sheval Taisa, tzivon al haroyos. All the Birchas HaMitzvahs are about positive, and this is a negative. So the Rosh says Birchas HaShevach. Comes along the Levush and he says, I think it's Birchas HaNehenen. You're getting married, you're going to enjoy life with your Eishes Chayil. So it's Birchas HaNehenen, which is a bit strange because it's not formulated as Birchas HaNehenen. It's either Shvach, Mekadesh Ame Yisrael Edei Chuppah V'Kedushin, or Reisha, Asher Kedushono B'Mitzvosav. It's clear that that is Drash. It's not really Pshat. The Levush doesn't disagree with the Rambam and the Rosh. The Rambam says Birchas HaMitzvah, the Rosh says Birchas HaShevach. Simon Mem Zayin Birchas HaTorah, he says, V'harevno is Birchas HaNehenen. It's about Mesikas HaTorah. Birchas HaNehenen. And he writes some interesting comments. So somebody asked me if it's a Birchas HaNehenen, why 2 brochas? So he brings from Chocham Echad, just like by Achilas Matzah, you say 2 brochas. Asher Kedeshuna b'Mitzvos Tzivon Achilas Matzah is Birchas HaMitzvah, and you say Moitzi. Moitzi is Birchas HaNehenen. Same by Birchas HaTorah. Asher Kedeshona was on the mitzvah, the equivalent to Asher Kedeshona Achilas Matzah, and V'harevno is the equivalent to Moitzi Lechem and Oretz. That's a Birchas HaNehenen. So the first and the second brochas are Birchas HaMitzvah and Birchas HaNehenen, just like we find by Matzah. He says no. By Matzah, the mitzvah and the Hanoah are totally detached one from another. So you need two brachas. But by Talmud Torah, the Hanoah is the mitzvah is the Hanoah. They're one and the same. Simchas HaTorah is part of mitzvahs Talmud Torah. You know, Shashua Shel Torah is Darko Shel Torah. So the Hanoah and the mitzvah are not two separate things. So you don't need two different brachas. That's what the Levush argues. So the Levush says, the first bracha is on the Torah you're going to learn today. The second bracha is on the Torah you learned yesterday, which is also a strange chiddush. So somebody asked me, how could you say a bracha on the Torah you learned yesterday? It's la'achashir ikul. And he says, by Torah there never is ikul, mikra mole dibra kosa, v'serascha b'toch mayay. It's amusing, this pilpul. So he says one bracha as a bracha achroina, Torah you learned yesterday. The other one is on the Torah you're going to learn today. It's la'achashir ikul. He says, more ikul v'serascha b'toch mayay. It's always there, all your life. So it is clear that this is divrei drash. V'harevnu is not Birchas Hananen. Birchas Hananen is only achila v'shtiya. Even Birchas HaBesomim, there is no bracha achroina. Rashi writes in Nida Daf Nun Aleph, because it's not a Hanoah Gemura, and Ruchnius, there is no Birchas Hananen. So v'harevnu is a Birchas HaTfilah, which we plead with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to let us partake in Mesikus HaTorah. The Gemara says in Adon Pei Aleph, and I quoted the Gemara before, Alma of the Haaretz. What brought about Churban HaBayis and Golus Yisrael? Al Ozvam Esterosi. So the Gemara says, Dova Zenisha LeChachomim, LeNeviim, LeMalachi HaShoris, Velo Pirshuo. Till HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself said, Al Ozvam Esterosi. And Chazal say, Shaloi Baruch Hu B'Torah Techilo. Does anybody know who wrote the Degel Machne Ephraim? Familiar with the Sefer? Who wrote the Degel Machne Ephraim? You should know. The Degel Machne Ephraim is one of the Sifrei Yesod in Olam HaChasidus. He was a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov and one of his greatest Talmidim. Pashas B'Shalach, the Degel Machne Ephraim writes, Shamati memori zikeini HaKodesh, the Baal Shem Tov, Shaloi bochu b'Torah tchila, they didn't say v'harevno. V'hu pele. And it is a pele, because v'harevno is the lesser of all the three brachas. Mo'ule sheba brachas, the most important bracha is Asher Bocha Bono. And then we have Birchas Mitzvah. V'harevno is a bracha smucha lechaverto. So how does the Baal Shem Tov know that the problem was what caused Churban HaBayis is they did not say v'harevno? And Degel Machne Ephraim writes Pele. So let me share with you what I understand the Baal Shem Tov. Could I understand the Baal Shem Tov better than the Degel Machne Ephraim? Definitely not. It was his Zayda and his Rebbe. Nitna Reshus. So everybody struggles with the question, and so does the Taz. Almu of the Haaretz, that pasuk refers to the Bayis Rishon. In Yom Tov, the Gemara says, Bayis Rishon Chorav al Avodah Zorah Gili Arayis and Shvichas Damim. Not. So how is that? Shalei Bochu B'Torah Tchila. So my understanding is this. When there are Oivdei Avodah Zorah and Shoifchei Domim and Megali Aroyes, it's obvious. It's obvious. It's not something nobody heard about. Every other day, they found a murdered person. And then they needed to do a Egla Rufo. It's a big thing. And how come Chachomim, Chachmei Ador weren't aware that people are Oiva and Gimel Averes Chemuris? How could it be? I think everybody knew Almu of the Haaretz, Gimel Averes Chemuris. The question was, how did this befall us? How could a Yid be a Rotzeach? It's a Tata de Satan. How could it be? Seres HaDibros is lo tirtzach. Did you ever hear of a Jewish murder? It doesn't make sense. How did this happen? And how could a Yid be an Oived Avodah Zarah when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, V'gam b'cho yaminu la'olam? How could it be Oived Avodah Zarah of dor achar dor? Every generation since Yetzias Mitzrayim passed down the same story. Millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, and for 1 year it didn't stop. So how can he be an Oived Avodah Zarah? How did this happen? That was the question nobody understood and nobody could answer. It's not the direct Sibo, but rather Sibas HaSibo. How could it be that in Klal Yisrael there were Roitzchim, Oived Avodah Zarah, and Megali Aroyes? That is what nobody understood till HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Al Ozvam Esterosi. The only thing that keeps us in stride, the only guarantee to Yiddishkeit and to Kedusha and Tahara is only Talmud Torah and Ahavas Torah. That was the big question that nobody had an answer to till HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you don't appreciate Torah and you don't know what Torah means for the individual, for the Kehillah, for Klal Yisrael, and it is only Torah. And if you leave my Torah, then it's a free fall. It's a free fall ad l'tahim. And that is why the Baal Shem Tov said, what were they lacking? V'harevno, Mesikas HaTorah. And if there is no Mesikas HaTorah, then your children, you're going to lose children. And your children won't follow in your footsteps. And ultimately, you're going to be totally lost. And that is the limud of Al-Oz v'Misterosi and why the Baal Shem Tov said. And that is why I think V'harevno is a strange bracha. Why is it strange? Because in all the other Birchas HaTfilah, we have one request and never two. We mentioned Birchas Tfilas HaDerech. You ask for one thing. Keep us safe till we get back home. Brachas im Tzoyes in Shmoyne Esrei. Every bracha has one request. And this bracha we have two different requests, which is uncommon. V'harevno, v'niya anachnu v'tzetzuenu. So I say, these are not two distinct requests, the two sides of the same coin. How could we realistically expect and hope that our children will follow in our footsteps? And they too will be Oyav Terascha. It is only if V'harevnu Hashem Elokeinu is Divrei Terascha Befinu. If our kids will experience and feel what Simchas HaTorah is and what Simchas HaMitzvah is and the Mesikas of Torah and share with your children the beauty of Torah, it is only then that we could really hope and expect V'nihi anachnu v'tzetzuenu v'tzetzoi tzetzuenu kulonu yodi shomecho v'lomdei serusecho lishma. So Shavuos is an amazing day. And the other two Yomim Neroim, we have mitzvahs. Sukkot, we have the Dalad Minim and the Sukkah. Pesach, we have so many mitzvahs. Matzah, Mora, Dalad Koisa, Sipi Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shavuos, we have nothing. Shavuos, we have nothing because Shavuos, we have everything. Shavuos is Torah, and Torah is everything. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. So Shavuos, you don't need any specific mitzvahs. You have nothing on Shavuos because you have everything on Shavuos. Shavuos is the day of Kabbalah HaTorah. Shavuos is the day of V'harevnu Hashem Elokeinu es Divrei Terascha Befinu. And a Sefer Hasidus, they say, Shavuos is the Rosh Hashanah of Ruchnias. So Rosh Hashanah, you ask for Bona Chaim, Ezoyna Ravicha. Shavuos, you ask for Avos Torah and Yireh Shamayim. And that is a great day. And that is why we're all up all night. So what is the meaning in yeshiva? You have a Seder Limud, you say Tikkun Leil Shavuos. What? But if an individual wants to say Tikkun, he could. So, Minig Yisrael Torah, hundreds of thousands of Eden say Tikkun Leil Shavuos. Hundreds of thousands of Eden just sit and learn all night. What's my Minig? I don't think I ever in my life finished the entire Tikkun. It's very hard. So when I begin to drowse off after saying some tikkun, I open the Gemara. When I get tired, I say some tikkun. And 2:30 in the morning in our shul, kishabikshu hu am lehisnamnem, I give a shiur. And it's always about a sugya of Talmud Torah, and then, people become, once again, lebedik and animated, and so whatever you do, it's all about Torah. So this is a magnificent night in which we all try to be up all night. As I got into the elevator, a choshev younger man asked me, but if I'm going to be up all night, I'm not going to be able to learn like I should learn, by night or the next day. He said, better not to be up all night, to take a nap in the middle of the night. And I said, no, be up all night. It's a minig vasikin, it's a minig kodesh, even if it comes with a certain expense. So you're not going to be able to learn like you would like to learn, but it's a choshev minig. The Shloah Kodesh writes, when the B'is Yosef and his chabur were up all night, they had Gili Eliyahu, and the Maggid came to them. So I don't expect a Maggid to come to you in the middle of the night in the yeshiva, but you have a lot of Megiddim in the yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva and the Ramim, and it is an important minig. So try to be up all night and learn and daven and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us all Avos Torah and Yer Shamayim. So a good Yom Tov and a good Shabbos, and we should be Zoycha B'Korav. The Zohar Kodesh says that the Gula will come on Shavuos, Sheniska B'Korav B'Yomeinu.